Australia had a cactus problem, which is strange because Australia did not start with it. Humans brought it. At first, prickly pear looked useful. It had fruit. It could grow in rough places. It could work as a living fence and support tiny insects used to make red dye. So people looked at this spiky green plant and thought, potential. Tiny problem. It also had the potential to cover millions of hectares in spikes. Once it got comfortable, Australia was not dealing with a cute cactus anymore. It was dealing with a green, thorny wall that farms, animals, and humans could not get through. This is prickly pear, the useful guest that took over the house, blocked the door, and stabbed the furniture. Prickly pear is a group of cactus species, especially Opuntia species, with flat pads, sharp spines, and fruit. So the original idea was not, let us ruin farmland with cactus. The idea, this plant could be useful, and that is how many backfires begin, not with evil, with usefulness. Prickly pear came to Australia very early in European settlement with the first fleet in 1788. Later, people used it as hedges, grew it in gardens, and saw it as hardy, practical, and manageable. On difficult land, a plant that survives heat, dryness, poor soil, and works as a living fence can look like a gift for about 5 seconds. Because here is the thing about a plant that survives almost anything. Sometimes it survives you. Prickly pear spread and spread and spread. It did not stay in one garden or fence line. It moved into pastures, farms, roadsides, and bushland. Birds and animals could spread seeds. Pieces of the plant could take root. Pads could break off and start again. That is a horrifying feature in a plant. Imagine cutting off part of the problem, and the cut off piece says, "Thank you, I will now become another problem." By the early 20th century, prickly pear had become one of Australia's worst weed invasions, covering huge areas in parts of Queensland and New South Wales. And covered does not mean a few weeds around a paddock. It means dense cactus thickets, walls of pads, spines everywhere. Land you could not walk through. Land livestock could not use. Land that looked less like a farm and more like a cactus had declared independence. Picture a farmer at the edge of his property. Yesterday, maybe there was open pasture. Now there is a huge green barricade covered in needles. He looks at the cactus. The cactus looks back, in the way plants do not look back, but somehow still win. And the farmer realizes, I cannot punch this. So humans tried to fight it. They cut it, burned it, dug it out, poisoned it, crushed it, and brought machinery. The cactus kept coming back. Leave pieces behind, and some regrow. Clear one patch but miss another, and it spreads again. You are negotiating with a spiky empire. This is where the backfire becomes almost absurd. The plant that was supposed to be useful on farms made farms unusable. The living fence became a living prison. The hardy plant became too hardy. The thing humans liked about it became the trap. That is the pattern again. Humans choose a trait, useful, strong, survives tough conditions. Then reality turns the trait around and says, would you like to see this at full size? By the 1920s, the prickly pear problem was so bad that Australia needed a different answer. Not just axes, not just poison, not just please stop being cactus. They needed something that could attack the plant across enormous areas. So scientists looked for natural enemies from the cactus's original range, something that attacked prickly pear specifically without becoming the next disaster. Eventually, they found one of the most famous insects in biological control history, Cactoblastis cactorum, a moth. After millions of hectares of cactus, the hero was not a tank, not a flamethrower, not a giant machine, a moth, a tiny flying thing that looks like it should be losing a fight with a lampshade. But the moth had a secret weapon, its larvae. The adult moth lays eggs on the cactus. The larvae hatch, burrow into the pads, and start eating from the inside. Very disrespectful toward a cactus. Very useful for humans who had spent decades losing to it. From the outside, the cactus looks tough. Spines, thick pads, a plant that says, do not touch me. But the larvae go inside, eat the soft tissue, the cactus rots, and the plant collapses. Suddenly, the spiky empire has a weakness small enough to fit on a finger. The moth was released in Australia in 1926, and the results were dramatic. Cactoblastis became a great example of successful biological control. Huge areas of prickly pear were cleared. Almost lost land could be used again. Think about that. Humans created a cactus disaster. Then a moth helped fix it. But this is not simply plant bad, moth good. The better lesson is caution. Prickly pear was introduced because it looked useful. It spread because it was alive, tough, and suited to the conditions. Then humans used another living thing to control it. This time, biological control worked extremely well in Australia. But that success does not erase the original mistake. It highlights it. The moth was not chosen by someone saying, well, moths eat things. Bring a moth. That would be the cane toad version of thinking. Instead, scientists searched for enemies that attacked the cactus specifically. That difference matters. The cactus introduction was confidence. The moth introduction was investigation. One was, this could be useful. The other was, what exactly eats this plant and what else could go wrong? That is the growth in the story. Humans made a simple mistake, then used a more careful version of the same idea to reduce the damage. Nature broke the plan. Then nature helped repair the plan, but only after the first plan became enormous. Picture the cartoon version. A human plants one cactus pad beside a fence. Years pass. The cactus spreads field by field. The human brings tools, fire, poison. The cactus remains. Then a tiny moth arrives. The cactus looks down and says, "Really? That?" The moth says nothing, because moths are very good at dramatic silence. Then the larvae go inside, and the cactus starts losing from within. That is why this story works. A backfire with a strange second twist. The first living solution became the problem. Then another living solution helped control the first one. But the difference was knowledge. The first introduction trusted usefulness. The second introduction studied relationships. That is the real lesson. You cannot judge a living thing only by what humans want from it. A cactus is not just fruit, dye, or a fence. It is seeds, pads, spines, regrowth, spread, and competition. A plant does not know the border of your property. It simply uses the conditions available. That is why useful can be dangerous. A useful species in one place can become a disaster in another. Same plant, different context, different result. So the plan was simple. Bring in prickly pear, use the fruit, use the dye, use the living fence. But the cactus did not stay useful. It spread, it rooted, it regrew. It covered land until farms were trapped behind green walls of spines. And after humans spent years trying to beat a cactus by force, the thing that finally turned the story was not a bigger hammer. It was a tiny moth, which is probably the most insulting way a cactus empire can fall. If you like this one, the next video is right here. Go watch that. And as always, let me know what you think down below. Thanks for watching, dummies. I'll see you in the next one.